Hello and welcome back to the Unlock Potential podcast. On this week's episode, we have Dan Campio from Prymal Productions. On today's episode, we spoke about Dan's studio, creating content and how to start a podcast. I hope you enjoy. Thanks for coming on, Dan.
It's a pleasure, Demi. Thanks for having me.
How does it feel to be at the other side of the table?
Weird. It's always weird. I've done it a few times with different people, different clients, but it's always weird because I'm usually in the curtain behind your shoulder there. So I'm not even in this room usually when we're recording. And if I am, I'm generally on that side of the table because I'm hosting my own podcast. So yeah, it's different. I like it though.
That's all. I was like, you done the podcast with me, talking about my story, but obviously that was kind of more about me. Spoke a little bit about you, and then anytime I mention you, I'm like, oh, me and Dan were only talking about this or whatever. Everyone's like, probably, who's Dan?
There's a weird thing happening. Everyone's wondering, who's this weird Dan guy? Everybody's mentioning, like, because a lot of people on my clients will say, oh, and Dan this and Dan that, but I'm never in the room, so no one knows who I am. Just this random dude that hides behind the curtain in the podcast studio.
Yeah, so I just thought it'd be good. You make my podcast happen. I literally just walk in the door and then I walk out after I do the podcast and you do all the editing, you do everything for us. I make my life easy. So I just thought it'd be good to have an episode with yourself and telling us exactly what you do and what you could do for someone who's looking to start a podcast and how easy you make it. So how did you start? So where did you start?
So I won't go into my backstory. My history originally was in the health industry. I trained as a physio, but about 4 or 5 years ago, in the last job I worked in the clinic, I did a lot of the media stuff anyway. It wasn't my job, but I was doing a lot of the videography, the sound stuff, the social media, the marketing, all that kind of stuff. But I love podcasts, absolutely love podcasts. And in the job that I did, we worked in the functional medicine realm. So a lot of the stuff we were doing, a lot of the kind of therapies we would do and a lot of the stuff we were learning. It's not that it wasn't mainstream, but you wouldn't hear it on the radio, for example, and there was no real resources for it here. So I used to learn a lot of this stuff from podcasts, health podcasts and science podcasts and stuff like that. A lot of stuff coming from the States and things. And I loved it, absolutely loved it. So when we were working with our clients, I used to be having the same conversations over and over again, trying to explain what we do and what functional medicine is and how to empower yourself when it comes to your health, and that kind of spread into other areas like performance and mental health and addiction and all that kind of stuff. But I did find myself repeating myself over and over and over again, saying the same kind of stuff. So I was like, I wonder if we could do a podcast about this. And this is 6-7 years ago. And it was purely as a tool for us to get the information out to people. So I used to sit down with the doctor that I worked with. We'd have conversations around things like hormones and health and mental health and addiction and all this kind of stuff. And we'd give this podcast down to our clients, our new clients. And it just spread like wildfire. It was mad because someone would get it and they'd really be impacted by what they heard in the podcast, and they'd send it on to their sister or their friend or their brother or whatever. And I was like, oh, this is really cool because people would be coming in.
Was this on like Spotify?
Yeah, it's actually called the Human Regeneration Project. It's still up there now. And the stuff...
still going now, is it?
It's not still recording, but you can still go back and listen to some of the episodes. And it was just a great tool for helping other people. And it was exciting to me, first of all, because I'd gotten a lot of my not education, but I'd learned a lot of stuff from listening to podcasts and different experts. And now we were doing that and giving that to other people. And I was seeing the same response. People were like, oh, this is an amazing resource. I was like, oh, there's definitely something here.
Did you set up like everything for that podcast then as well?
In terms of the technical side of things? Yeah. So I had a little bit of experience with videography. I had a good friend who's a videographer as well, and photography, and had access to some equipment and stuff like that. But basically, like the first couple of episodes, I recorded the intros and outros. I was under a duvet at home, like in a cupboard, trying to manage the sound and stuff. And like I'd put together like a sellotaped together stuff to hold the mics for the first couple of episodes, and then obviously we invested a little bit more into it as we went, and I learned as I went as well. So like I had some basic knowledge when it came to audio production, but I wasn't an expert. Yeah, the Academy of YouTube was there, so I kind of filled the gaps I needed to. And then, as I said, I had friends in the media industry I was able to call on to kind of help me upskill or whatever. But again, it wasn't my main gig; it was just a hobby at that point, and it was really helping with the clinic. So over the course of a couple of years, I really, really got into the whole podcast side of things and actually creating podcasts. And in 2019, the end of 2019, I decided I wanted to just do something, a side project. I was interested in it. I was like, we'll try this and see what this is. Still working in the clinic, and I set up the company, Prymal. Didn't know what it was. Terrible business plan. I didn't know if it was a business or not. I rented a room downstairs. All I knew was I wanted to have a space where I could have conversations like I was having with the doctor and other people in the health industry. And when people came, I knew I'd have a good connection. It would bring opportunities. We'd get the information out there to people. We'd help people with their kind of health and lifestyle and stuff like that. And I was like, we'll see what happens from then on. It wasn't really a business plan as such, but it was like, well, I want to really lean into this and give it a go. So myself and a friend of mine, Jess, we actually set up the company together. And he wasn't really involved from that point on. Then I kind of took over, but it wasn't really meant to be like a production company as such. It was more about the information and the podcast and helping people. But then we got into the start of 2020, and obviously, if you know what happens, the whole world shut down, and the clinic I worked in shut down, and everything got kind of everything stalled and stopped. And I was like, right, it's a great time to maybe work on Prymal and see what we can do with this. And started to kind of work a little bit more on the structure of the business. And when that was happening, people started to reach out to me because they heard the podcast and heard the content and they saw what I was doing. And they started to reach out to me asking, could I help them with their stuff? And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm sure I can. And I started producing content for a few people during lockdowns, like people within a 5K radius who could come to me. But I just started to build the business and the model. And one thing I always knew was, like, the podcast is just a tool. What people really want is to get their story out there, to build connections and community, to grow their businesses or their brands. They want that. And people think it's the podcast or the Instagram page, but it's actually not. It's the skills that you develop and the experience you have and the network that you build. So for me, when I was designing from that point on the business model, it was like, it has to be all about the experience, and it has to like really solve the problems that people like you, business owners, are dealing with.
Yeah.
And nowadays we have a huge focus on short form content, but there's not a lot of kind of deep connected podcast content. There's loads of podcasts, but there's not a lot of good podcasts. And in my opinion, it's because there's no system around, there's no structure there. People don't really know how to do something that consistent and long term. So that became the business model then. The recording and the production side of stuff is relatively easy. Like you need technical knowledge, but it's not rocket science. Anybody can do it. But it was the experience that I wanted to build, like a nice environment.
Yeah, everyone does be like this, like Joe Rogan's studio.
Yeah, it's cool. And Joe, I like Joe Rogan's podcast as well, and it's definitely an influence in the design. Everyone comes in and says, who designed this for you? I actually did it on myself.
Did you?
With
Yeah,
a friend of mine,
ask you
Ben.
that, yeah.
And built everything. I got this table custom made, and then everything else was built.
How, obviously you don't want to probably even say, but around how much, like if someone wanted to do something like this, like around how much would it cost? Like,
yeah, I can tell you, it's not. It depends. You're going to hear me say it depends a lot in this conversation. So to produce a podcast, you can do for free. Literally can do for free. Most of the tools you need in terms of software are free. Like we use Anchor or Spotify for podcasts. That's the hosting platform. It's free. You can record a podcast on your phone. So you already own that. So technically that's free. You don't need nice mics and stuff like that. All you really need is something to record and a bit of energy and enthusiasm and curiosity to do your podcast and a structure, as we'll talk about. So like this is obviously a full production studio now. So there's thousands invested in this in terms of like the cameras that we're on right now and the microphones and the lighting and everything that goes into like the overheads I have for renting the room and maintaining it and all that kind of stuff. So like I couldn't really put a figure on it now, but the last 3 or 4 years I've invested a lot into this. But you don't need this. However, if you want to have access to this, again, you don't necessarily need to build your own studio. So you could build a studio in your bedroom. You could do it in your bedroom like I did with your duvet, or you could come and hire someone like me with a production studio to do it for you.
That's what kind of, I didn't, like I was like, I want this to be good quality. Like I don't want to like start off and it's like you'll see some podcasts and you're just kind of like, the thing is like blurry. The sound is really bad. That's how I was like, I want to make sure like this be good. And obviously your studio and you have all the equipment, I feel like you make it like handy for someone just coming in.
Yeah. I'll give you the breakdown, the way I look at this, because there's lots of recording studios. I don't class this as a recording studio, even though it is. It's a system and it's an experience for people. So for me, when you're creating something like if it's a podcast or a business or whatever it is, if you're creating something, obviously you need a good platform. So you need an idea. And you need to actually enjoy what you're doing. They're the big things. That's going to keep you motivated and give you the momentum. So when it comes to the podcast, like you have to have some sort of idea, something you want to share. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be an expert in anything. It could just be something you're interested in. You could be on a learning journey. It could be a comedy podcast, could be a football podcast, could be a beauty or a business podcast. But you have to have some sort of foundation there. And then you have to have a system. So as you know now, because we've gone through my processes, you have to know like why you're doing it, who you're speaking to, how often you're going to release and record.
That's all in your course that you provide if you were to start with you. Yeah.
Exactly, yes. That's the system that I build and I help customize that for each person that comes in. So that's really, really important to have that system there, because that's what's going to help you maintain the podcast and be consistent. And that's a buzzword now, but it really is like the stats on it are mad. It's about 80% of podcasts die after 3 episodes, and that's usually between 1 and 3 months. And that's because people just don't have the consistency. So millions of podcasts start, and about 1% of them actually go past 6 months. So if you get past 6 months with your podcast, you're in the top 1% of podcasters worldwide. And people go, oh my God, that can't be true. It's absolutely true. Because most people will start, or most people won't start, and then most people who do start can't be consistent because they don't have the system. It's not because they don't have a nice mic or good production. It's because they don't have a system there, and they don't really know why they're doing this, and the impact that they want to have, and the vision around it isn't really clear. So for me, they're the most important things. So that's what we cover first. And then when it comes to production, like you mentioned, my belief is if you're gonna do something and you have something you believe is valuable, you kind of want to present it in the best way possible. So if it looks good and sounds good, it sets a standard. It's like your business. If everything you do in your business represents your business. So if you're doing a podcast, like I said before, you can do it on your iPhone. But if you really believe you have something that's big and valuable and it's going to have an impact, you're doing it an injustice if you don't give it the best that you can give it. Now, that's a very important term. You don't have to do it in a studio. If the best you can do is your iPhone, do it on your iPhone. But learn a little bit about lighting and learn a little bit about audio. And that's not going to cost you any money. You can do it on YouTube. But give it the best attention and the best chance to compete, because like there's so much content out there now. Most of it is subpar in terms of audio and video. But if you believe you have something that people should listen to and people are going to engage with and people are going to get value from, I would invest either time, energy, or you can invest financially as well if you want in giving it the best chance to compete. And that usually means it has to look good and it has to sound good. Because people need to sit and listen to you for 45 minutes or an hour, or sometimes in my case 3 hours.
Yeah, your podcast to be about 3 hours?
A couple of episodes of 3 hours. The average is about 2 hours. Yeah.
Oh my God, stop.
Yeah, it's mad.
Sometimes you get into a conversation and you're just kind of like, oh my God, I want to, like, you want to keep it going, but then, where was I going with this? Yeah, so what do you think about that people say, I think we spoke about this before, that there's like, you hear people being like, oh, everyone's doing a podcast now, or like, I wouldn't want to do that, like everyone's doing a podcast now. What do you think about that?
Everybody says that when they come in first. The first concern they have is, oh, it's saturated, and it's funny. Because look, if you listen to this now, right, look around, the next 10 people you see, are they all doing podcasts? The next 100 people, are they all doing podcasts? It's everybody's not doing a podcast. It's less than 1% in the creator industry, which includes podcasts and YouTube and TV and radio and books and social media. 1% of people are creators. 99% of people are consumers. So 99% of people are not creating this content. There are more podcasts around now than there were, but even with that stat that I mentioned earlier on, about 80% of them go to the podcast graveyard after about 3 months. So there's lots of people starting stuff like this, or the new Instagram page, or I'm starting my new diet in January, and most people stop. So if you are someone who's considering doing something like this, don't let that be something that can discourage you, because most people aren't doing this. Everybody doesn't have a podcast. That's the comment. Oh, everyone has a podcast now. Who? Show me 10 year mates.
I heard that a few people saying it to me. Oh, everyone's doing them now, aren't they? I'm like,
a lot of businesses are starting podcasts, because it's a very, very effective tool for growing business. Now, it's a slow burner and it's a long-term tool, but it gives your business depth. It gives people a look behind the scenes into who you are and why you do what you do, and even look at your journey now. If someone had seen your Instagram page 4 months ago or 5 months ago before you started your podcast, and now they've had access to your podcast. Back then they didn't know who the hell you were. You were the business owner, the face of the business, and you were Demi, whatever they saw in a 15-second clip on Instagram. But now they've had hours of listening to you have conversations and be curious and understand and know what you're into, they know the kind of questions you ask.
To get to know you more.
They get to know you more, So they're more invested in you as a person, which means they're more likely to engage with your business. And it's not all about business and selling, but that's why business owners like it, because it gives more depth and personality to their business. But back to your original question there, like if you want to do something, just do it. It doesn't matter. Even if there were billions of podcasts, if everybody has a podcast, it doesn't really matter, because the people who want to engage and listen with
it's like saying everyone's posting on Instagram, so don't post.
So don't post. Or there's coffee shops, like how many coffee shops are there? But people pick the ones that they like. Personal trainers. Everyone's a personal trainer nowadays. That's another common phrase. Everyone's not a personal trainer.
But everyone is more into fitness.
Everyone's more into fitness,
So there is people for it. Like
there's definitely people for it. And you will pick a trainer based on someone who you relate to and someone who relates to you. You're not necessarily going to go for maybe the lad who has like powerlifting stuff on his page and he's monstrous and he's jacked and it's all. Maybe that's not your style, but maybe it is Martin, and Martin kind of deal. He's a little bit more friendly and he's more engaging. Like, but some people will love the big jack bodybuilder dude. Like, so it's personal taste. If there was millions of personal trainers, people will still gravitate to the ones that, number one, are doing a good job and presenting their information well, and number two, that they relate to as well. So it's not a reason to not start something. I actually just posted a video yesterday about it. Like, most people will think about this stuff, and that's one of the reasons they won't do it. And realistically, like, I don't know, we talk about Hormozy sometimes, Alex Hormozy, like he constantly talks about this concept of in 100 years' time, nobody's going to remember your name. Doesn't matter what you do, unless you conquer half of Europe,
or you're the president or something.
Or you're the president, no one's going to remember your name. And in 2 generations' time, no one's going to remember your kids' names. So nothing we really do is that important. It's not important enough to stop you from doing something you want to do. Like, what would my friends think? I'll give you my experience and my experience with loads of clients.
I got that when I started the podcast. I was like, everyone's going to be like, what are you even going to talk about? Like, I got that. I feel like people, but like, once I told someone, I'm going to start a podcast, I was just kind of getting like mad confused looks. Like, what? Where's this coming from?
And why did you do it anyway?
I was to like, obviously more kind of what you were saying about the business. I felt like I needed more content and stuff, and I thought that was kind of the way going forward. Like, because an episode could be like an hour long, so it's just constant content, and just to make it easier in that way.
And what's the response been now? You're 16 episodes in.
It's actually doing really well. Like, I wasn't expecting that.
And what about the people who were giving you weird looks before? What are they saying?
Yeah, like, I don't think I don't think anyone was expecting it to actually do so well, like it is. Yeah. I'd say you got that. You were saying that as well.
I personally had that fear at the start because when I started running the business, it's like, I'm going to have to start using social media now. It's not that I have an issue with social media, but I don't like using it.
And it's some people to be like, oh, the little influencer wannabe, or
exactly,
that thought behind it. Like,
I thought I was going to get a roasting. And in my personal experience, 100% positivity. I've only ever had 1 or 2, I suppose you could call them negative interactions on social media through the page that I use, and they were just people with too much time on their hands, had a problem with something I said or something like that. But 99% of people, like all the lads that I was worried about, are massively supportive of me. I thought they were going to rip it out of me for doing the podcast, for going on my stories. Hi guys, the latest podcast episode's out. Hugely supportive. Like, it's been overwhelmingly positive. And now with all the clients that I've worked with over the years, it's almost across the board the exact same response. Everybody gets a positive response. And the people, as I said, who give you the negative response, like,
they're just jealous or either.
It's a them problem, not necessarily a you problem. So, but in my experience, the response is almost always positive, unless you're doing something that's inherently negative on the platform. It's almost always positive. So again, another big reason people don't start is that fear. You know yourself, as soon as you get into the flow, like, you came in here like shaking like a leaf the first day. Yeah. And look at you now, like, you're way more comfortable. And we're like 3 months in. You're way more comfortable. You're having better conversations. You're learning stuff. You're going deeper. You're probably, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but figuring out stuff about yourself, and you're coming up against challenges to overcome, and it makes you a little bit more comfortable and confident in yourself. Like, this is the stuff, in my opinion, that podcasts and creating content and stuff like that gives people. It's not about the likes and the ego and the clout and the platform and stuff like that. It's about what it can do for you, and the positives far outweigh any potential negatives.
I feel like I've learned so much. Like, some of the days I walk out and I'm like proper like buzzed. Yeah, I had to be ringing Craig and I'm like, oh, listen to this and all. Like, this is mad. Like, it's like the networking and the people that you meet.
Do you remember in our first when we do a little strategy meeting at the start? I said that to you, like, whatever about the business stuff that will come, it's a slow burner. You don't, like, people getting into the podcast to make money, etc., etc., etc. It's absolutely a possibility, but it's a slow burn. It's down the road. You need to build up a bit of experience, and it takes time and stuff like that. But the network stuff, and the joy and the curiosity and all that kind of stuff, that comes really, really quickly. And then you start getting addicted to doing podcasts, and you're buzzing, because all you're doing really is having better conversations. Yeah. That you wouldn't usually, like, when was the last time, like, I always say this, but when was the last time that you sat down for an hour and had a conversation with somebody that you don't really know about something you're really interested in? It doesn't happen.
Yeah. Imagine texting someone, being like, here, can I meet you for a coffee? And we have it. They'd be like, what?
And they're like, what's wrong?
Like, not even, imagine texting someone you didn't know, someone you looked up to or whatever. Like, they'd hardly be like, wow. Yeah. Like,
but the podcast gives you an opportunity to do the same thing, but just in the context of like an interview style, I suppose. But you
Yeah.
still meet that
And then
person.
they're getting something from it as well. So why wouldn't they do it?
Why
Like,
wouldn't they do it? Yeah, they get their
Yeah.
content. And a lot of times, and it's another thing we discussed at the start. Like people are worried about, oh well, why would this person want to come on my podcast? Or I haven't done anything. I'm not an influencer. I don't have big numbers or anything like that. But we always forget, like if I'm interested in, like, I'll give you an example, right? I love motorbikes. Someone wants to talk to me about motorbikes. I'm like, you want to talk about motorbikes? Oh, you want to talk about motorbikes? Most people don't want to talk to me about motorbikes. But if someone expresses an interest in something that I'm really passionate about, I'm like, I'd love to do that. I'd love to sit down and chat to you about motorbikes. So most of the people that you reach out to, you're like, oh, I don't know why they'd come on. And some people ignore you and say no, whatever. But a lot of people are actually honoured and want to come on, no matter how big or small your audience is, because it gives them an opportunity to talk about the thing they're interested in.
Yeah.
So they really love it and appreciate it. And then they get to come into the studio and have coffee and chill out and relax and do a cool interview. So it's another concern people have. Again, like, who's want to talk to me? Most people, to be honest with you. Like, most people will want to at some stage have a conversation with you, and you won't get them.
I feel like a lot of people would love to come on a podcast.
And it's a cool experience. And people who come in, a lot of people who come in, it's their first time ever coming on a podcast, and they come in nervous, and then they leave going, that was amazing. It was so cool.
Yeah.
And because like you, as Demi, as the host, you create that environment for people to, like, I'm sitting here now talking the last 20 minutes non-stop because I love doing this, and you're talking to me about something I'm interested in.
Yeah, you're a natural.
Yeah, well, I enjoy it, like, and you've given me the opportunity here because you asked me to come on, and I just want to make sure I'm giving value to people. That's my big thing. But like, it's fun to come here and sit and have a conversation, talk about something that I love.
How many podcasts have you would you say you've been on now?
Oh, not as many as I've done. We were chatting earlier on. I've done about 75 or 76 episodes on the Prymal podcast, and probably another 30 or 40 outside of that.
30 or 40? Is that your guests and then obviously other kind of podcast?
Well, sorry, this podcast that I've hosted. So like different projects that I've done. But I haven't been on that many. Like, I'm not that interesting.
I thought like a lot of your clients would ask you to come on.
Some of them do, yeah. They do. And I'm more than happy to do it. Like, again, my big thing is if someone is sitting here listening now, I hope they're getting value from, they're giving us their time. Like, and their time is valuable, so I hope there's some value that we're able to give to them. So if someone asks me to come on and they're genuinely interested in something I have to say and something I can contribute, then I'm always delighted to do it. I still find it weird when people ask me on.
Do you?
I'm like, why do you want me to come on?
Yeah, you would. Yeah, I probably get that about imposter syndrome. What
Big
would
imposter
you be talking
syndrome,
about?
yeah. And like, I'm not an expert in I'm not an expert in podcasts necessarily. Like, it's my business.
You know more than what nearly everyone in Ireland, like I'd say.
Experience in it for sure.
It's probably one of, you're probably like, here, give over. But it's probably one of the best like podcast studios in Ireland, if not. Do you know, I've never. Yeah, when I was looking it up, when I was saying to you, like when I was looking it up, like, I was like, I want to do a podcast. Where am I going to do this? And I was like, I don't know, Anton. But I was like, it's going to take me ages to try do it myself, learning what props or whatever you want to call them, like what to get. And then how to actually edit and stuff like that. I was like, I need to find somewhere that I can actually do it. And this was obviously the best one that I found. And anyways, so it's unreal setup that you have here.
I appreciate that, yeah. And like I said, like there's other guys and girls doing this, and they do a great job. I know a lot of the studios. I'm not going to give them the shout out on the podcast, but they do a great job. I'm not their competitor. That's not what I do. Like, you know what I do. I'm hands on with everybody. I have a very small team. James is in the back there now. James is an extension of me. Like, we love this. We take it really seriously. We believe like everything that you do and say in here has massive value. We want to help you get that out there. Other models for studios, they're just recording spaces, and that's fine. It's no problem. That's not what. Yeah,
that's what I found was just a recording space, and
that's fine.
I was like, I don't know how to edit it, or
and they do have educational stuff there as well. But like, my model is just different. I like working one-on-one with people. Yeah, I like getting invested in the story and the project and the why and all that kind of stuff. I have a passion for it, and I believe that the more I can create an environment where you feel comfortable, you're going to pass that on to your guest and they'll feel comfortable. You're going to get some great content. The podcast is going to do really, really well. Everybody wins. And then there's some good information out there. And then somebody's going to listen to your podcast and then change their life, and they're going to start a business or do something. So that's why I do this. It sounds very hallmarky and like, oh, he's so good for doing all this. I run a business. I want to make money. I want to grow my business. I want to have a bigger impact. I want to take care of my family. But like all the other studios, people say that regularly to me, like, your studio's the best one I've been in. I was like, I appreciate that. It's nice. I do take a lot of pride in the studio, but for me, it's more about the experience. Did you have a good time? How did you feel when you came here? Then just the recording and the pressing buttons and stuff like that. So that's maybe that comes across when people come in. Like, so thanks for the feedback.
A little Google review.
Yeah. Leave a Google review if you get a chance.
And so you were saying, is it only you and James then? Have you got any other staff around?
So myself, James and Ian, and like I've always said this, my team will always be really, really small, because I think if your team gets really, really big,
everything just gets messy then.
It's for me personally, and this is just obviously big companies do really, really well, but for me personally, I like the intimate connection that we have with our clients. And like Ian and James, those two guys are the kind of people I would be more than happy to not be here and leave them with my clients, because they're the same as me. They get it. They know why we're doing this. They're very passionate about it.
James is in there blushing.
James is in there blushing now, yeah. They're excellent at what they do. And they are the type of people I want to be around. And same with my clients. Like I'm pretty selective with my clients too. I work with the kind of people that I like to work with. So yeah, the team will grow, but it'll always be a very tight knit crew. We'll always do really, really solid work. And my like the bigger these things get, sometimes like I know a lot of friends and family and stuff in business, and it's not always the rule, but sometimes when things grow really fast, you lose control of the feeling behind the whole thing. It gets a little bit sterile, or you kind of lose the clarity on what the vision is. And again, this all sounds a bit airy-fairy, but it's very important to me from a business perspective. And like the feedback you've given me there, clients give me the feedback that they feel that in what we do, and all the interactions that we have and stuff like that. Massively important to me. So it's the three of us at the moment, and if it's any bigger, it won't be too much bigger.
Yeah. You're after getting another round now as well as this, aren't you?
Yeah, like it's all part of the growth plan. There's the setting we have here. I mean, you're in it right now. People don't really know because we've got these angles going on. It's not massive. Like it's relatively small, but that's for a reason. Like it's intimate. It's people feel kind of comfortable here. It's safe with James and the production part in the back there. I have another space now. We do a lot of social media content. So we'll be doing some like reels for people, talking head content and stuff like that for their businesses and stuff like that.
You go out to people as well and record.
Yeah, we go out to, it's a lot of, I work with a lot of fitness and health and wellness people at the moment. So we go to their gyms or their facilities and record their content. Like again, for me, the biggest value I can offer you as a business owner is I can save you time. It's not necessarily the fancy production. I can save you time. And we all know how important short form content now is for business growth and for connection and stuff like that. So most people in my experience in kind of smaller businesses waste way too much time trying to create content when they, one, don't enjoy it or like it, and two, don't really have the time because they're trying to grow their business.
I wouldn't be able to edit. I've tried editing before. I'm
well, you would, Pro. But you'd have to spend a lot of time learning.
Yeah.
And is that your priority? And like, exactly, to be honest, to give you back some props here, it's like we're high-fiving each other on the podcast. Like you really are an action taker with this, because you've hired people around you, like me, I'm one of them sitting here, to take care of elements of what you're trying to do that you don't have. You could do it. I'm telling you now, you could do what I do. You could do what Christos does or anybody does, but it would take you time to learn those skills. And is that what you want to be spending your time doing? So when I speak to business owners, it's the same kind of conversation.
You're not trying to be a videographer, you're just trying to get content out.
Yeah, and you will need to focus on the content, as in the creativity side of it, not necessarily the technical side of it. Because like we were trying to set up your gimbal earlier on there, like there's a million moving parts to this. A million moving parts to creating decent content. So it's not just about pointing your iPhone at something and press and go if you're looking to create really, really high quality content. So so we would go out to different businesses and basically, in as short amount of time as possible, like a 2 or 3 hour session, create a month's worth of content for that business, short form content, video content for their...
A month's worth? In a day?
Oh, in half a day. Like, could we have a system for it?
Right, okay.
Same as with the podcast. Like, we don't just rock up and start thinking of ideas. Like, they're prepared. Everything is laid out.
So do they, like, if you went in, like, what would they have, like, say, a list of things that they want to, like, what shots they want to get, or do you kind of think of it before you go in?
It's a collaborative effort. Right, okay. Yeah. So we would start off with our strategy, like we did with the podcast. Why are we doing this? Who are we trying to hit? What's the end goal? What's the outcome? What do you like doing? What kind of stuff do we talk about? What kind of impact do we want to have? Who are the people who are going to be engaging with the content? All this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then based off that plan, right, what stuff is working on these platforms? Is the Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, podcast, what's working? And what will demonstrate your authority in your industry, so that you know what you're talking about, that you have an expertise, that you have experience, you have clients, you have testimonials. And then after we've broken all that down, then we'll have a guideline for, okay, well, here's the type of content we can start off creating. And then we'll pick a period of time, usually about 90 days, where we'll do one shoot a month and we'll create that content, and then we'll sit down and analyze the content. Because, like, again, without a plan, you're just kind of shooting in the dark. Whereas if you can look back over 90 days and go, right, look, well, this stuff is doing really well. This stuff is not doing so good. You're getting great response here, or the phone is ringing here, or business is booming now and they're all mentioning the podcast, whatever it is. We'll kind of focus a little bit more on that, and we'll just curate that as we go along.
That's so good, because normally it would just be like, just come in and record kind
free
of
for all.
thing.
Yeah, 100% free for all.
Yeah, so you kind of give that to your clients.
Yeah, and like we did it with the podcast. Like this is not just.
Yeah, I didn't know you do that with actually going into them and recording. I didn't know you kind of do this like a plan kind of with them.
Oh yeah,
of exactly what content.
Everything has to have a system. That's my big thing, especially as a business owner. Like, and even if you're not a business owner, but most people I do, but are business owners. Like, if you don't have, you know this because you're a business owner. If you don't have a system, you could walk in the morning and you're like, okay, what'll I do today? Maybe I'll do my taxes today, and then I might record a bit of this course, and then maybe I'll see a client. And it's just you can never grow or scale. Now, I'm not a business expert, by the way, disclaimer here. But time is your friend as a business owner. And again, even if you're not, but time is really the kind of limited resource that we have. So if I can go in and rather the average person, the average business owner I work with spends about 20 to 25 hours a month creating content. And it's not even that good because they don't have a system or energy or passion, or they're not getting the feedback they need from it. So if we can go in and in 3 or 4 hours between the planning and the shooting, shoot that entire month's worth of content, there's 20 hours back.
So how many months of content would that be for them to be able to post, like say once a day? How
once
many videos
usually,
would you?
Usually you're looking between 15 and 20 videos, which gives you basically a reel every day. And then you'll sprinkle in other content depending on what their business is. So it could be photographs or carousels or written posts or podcast content and stuff like that. So between the jigs, like a lot of my clients would do both. They would do the social content and a podcast, and they're pulling clips from their podcast, and then they've got the social content that we've created, and then they've got stuff that's created by their users. So user-generated content like testimonials and photographs of people in the gym or in the cafe, whatever it might be. So you combine all that content. It's a lot of content. In a month, you could have 40, 50 things that you're posting. Now, in the grand scheme of things, again, if you look at the scale game, that's not a huge amount of content. But anybody who's listening to me right now go, 50 posts a month, geez, that's insane amount of content. Imagine trying to create that yourself. Hours and hours and hours trying to create that yourself. Whereas if we can condense that time down, it just gives you back your time. So it's not necessarily about the content. When it gives you back your time, two things happen. One, you're way more creative because now you're looking at the stuff you did and you're like, oh, that was really exciting. Can we do something with a bit of humor now? Or can we add a bit more personality to it? And you get way more creative because you're not doing it yourself. And the second thing that happens is you've an extra 20 hours in the month to work on your business. So the business starts to grow. And so it's not all about content. And I don't want people to get consumed with like, I have to be posting all the time and create all this content and be an influencer. But
I feel like a lot of it now, it's like if you're not heard of on social media, you're not going to be doing that well. And like,
it's the world we live in for sure.
Yeah.
But you can play the game. There's two worlds I see. You can get consumed by the game. What are the numbers and how many followers do I have and how many people engage with this post and what are the likes? And that's old school brand Instagram bullshit in my opinion. And it's toxic because it trains your brain to only do what the platform is going to like. Or you can decide that, right, I'm doing this thing. I'm doing a project or I'm running a charity or I'm starting a business. And the platforms I have at my disposal are Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, podcast, all these different platforms. So if I can create the content I want to create and tell the message that I have and really have value and impact and help people and use the platforms just to distribute that content, then I'm going to stay true to my values and who I am and what I'm trying to do with my project. But I can leverage the platforms because I understand how they work. So you can see how they're two completely different models. Most people are in column A. How many listens is it getting? How many likes is it getting? Because the brands are only going to give me X amount of money if I have 1,000 listens. And it's personal validation for me because if no one likes this post, it must mean I'm a shit person and my business is going to fail. So it's two different mindsets. I'm just leveraging the platforms over here, understanding that they can be a toxic place, but I'm just using them to get my message out there. Or here, I am the content. I am the platforms. I need to be liked. I need to be an influencer. I need to have 100,000 followers or whatever. So it's and just on the numbers game as well. Gary Vee speaks about this concept all the time. 1,000 super fans. We all think we need millions of followers to be successful. You don't really. You just need a small core group of really engaged people who are going to...
It's only 5% of your followers or something to see your content.
Less than 5%.
Is it
in
less,
most cases. Yeah. Unless you can get your engagement up in terms of offering real value and having people who really like your content. So like a podcast listener compared to an Instagram follower. An Instagram follower saw something, a post or something that you did and liked it, and they might never see you again. Or even though they do see you again, they might scroll by 95% of the posts they see because they're not really engaged. Whereas if someone listens to your podcast, they're sitting down and they're listening to you, well in this case me, talking nonstop for 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. And imagine trying to get that type of attention anywhere else. Like marketing companies pay big bucks for 2 seconds of your attention with Facebook ads and Google ads and stuff like that. You have my attention for an hour.
Yeah.
That's a completely different person. And then again, the old one people do is, right, you have 100 Instagram followers. Geez, that's a tiny Instagram account. You have 100 listens on your podcast. Put 100 people in a room and talk to them for an hour. Like, that'll change your perspective on what 100 people looks like very, very quickly.
When you put it that way.
Yeah, and this is real. Like, if someone listens to you for 45 minutes, they're engaged. They're listening to you. They're giving you their time. Anyone who's still listening to me now and hasn't turned it off yet, they're giving me their time. And like, I'm very grateful for that time. So I want to make sure I give them back value. But that's a real person sitting there listening to this information, and they're getting something from it, which means they're still listening. Whereas if I'm an Instagram follower, just scrolling by, and like, I know people with millions and millions of followers, it's not what people think it is. Not at all. It's not success in a bottle at all. And oftentimes, not in all cases, but oftentimes it's actually a curse, because it's called audience capture. You just create what the platform wants. So you change yourself to fit this model of what you think people want to see. So you become a different person. And like, there's friction there then, because that's not who you want to be. It's not what you want to do. Anyway, that was my holier than thou speech.
So going in with, do you do all your editing and stuff?
Yeah, so the editing is, again, it comes down to systems. It's all about systems. So like, editing is something I don't particularly enjoy, whereas other people, like I work with editors who love editing. Editing is like another part of the creative process. People think it's just the putting the bits together. But editing is where you tell the story, and editing is where you add all the flourishes and the flair and the feel and the texture to a piece of content. So I do the vast majority of my editing, but I have a system here now where we can do a lot of the stuff like what James is doing right now. He's working as we speak. He's doing some of the editing. He's switching the camera angles and he's doing stuff right now. And then afterwards, what we'll do is we'll do a little bit of mastering and mixing on the audio, and we'll combine that with the video and stuff like that. But the more you do this and the bigger the scale gets, because I have many clients now, I couldn't be affording to sit down for 5 or 6 hours.
That's what I was going to say. What does your week look like? Because you have kids and all of that.
Yeah, I have 2 kids and one on the way. I play senior football, so that's a massive commitment for me as well. My friends, have family, have hobbies, have all these different things as well. So like, as a business owner, and I don't know, this isn't a business owner's podcast, but it's hard to find that balance. So for me, I was like, okay, well, this industry is full of people who sell their time, like freelance. No problem with that. Some people love that. Not for me at all. I wanted some sort of system where I could help multiple people, and it wouldn't compromise anybody. So like, if I take more people on, your product might suffer then, because I have so many people, I can't get to your editing. So what we've built here is a little system that when you come in, we have a very, very kind of tidy little system from the moment you walk in to how we make your coffee, to where we sit you, where we light you, where the cameras go, how we edit it. And so by the time that we're finished, you're 80% of the way through our system. And then we're doing the last few bits where we're editing it together, we're making any cuts we need to make, we're putting in the graphics, we're kind of putting the music and stuff in. If there's ad reads, putting all that in. But we have a system for that. So we get very good at that very quickly, because we're repeating this system over and over again, as opposed to everything is completely different. Now, everyone gets an individualized approach, but within the system. Like you, with your courses, and if you have people coming in for training or anything like that, you have a system to train these people. You don't just make it up every time somebody comes in. Whereas the freelance world is different. If you're a freelance content creator, and there's probably people listening right now, it's different. It can be a little bit more unpredictable. You're dealing with different jobs all the time, different types of work. My whole thing is I love podcasts, and the social media stuff is an extension of getting people's voice out there. So that's what we do. We focus on that, and we get good at that. And then it's all about how do we promote the stuff and get it out there and build the industry. But like, we're not out doing big promo videos for corporate companies and in-house training videos and all this kind of stuff. We focus on what we love and what we're good at, which is podcasts and content. That's what we do. So
how many clients would you say you have now? Like, I'd say, is there a lot? Because I've come across a few on Instagram, like, oh, that's the studio I do.
There's a good few people now. Like, there's between, I'd say it changes all the time, because some people have seasons, some people stop, some people start, some people are in flux, some people have they record like a batch and then they come back. So
you said some people come in and do like a good few days in a row.
Some people do, yeah. It depends. So like, you're probably talking at any one time, there's probably between maybe 25 and 35 people consistently recording content of some sort between social media and podcast content. Again, I no interest in having a monstrous business here, because it gets very messy then. I want to work with the people I want to work with. I want to keep it nice and small, nice and tidy. And
I want to provide a good service.
An excellent service. That's what I'm all about. And a good experience. I want people to actually, this water bottle there. I want people to really enjoy when they come in here and have a great experience. And I want to be able to, for myself and James, or for Ian, to have time to kind of engage with the people and find out a little bit more about who they are. Because if we do that, then we can help you tell your story a little bit better, and the whole thing is going to be better. So yeah, it's never going. You're never going to hear me say, not touch wood now, of thousands of clients or hundreds and hundreds of clients or like that. It's not what I'm interested in. Why I do this is basically, as I said earlier on, to have time to spend doing the things I want to do, which is more on my own podcast, spend time with my family, and do the things I want to do outside of that, outside of business and outside of kind of making money or anything like that.
So what advice would you have for someone starting a podcast?
Just start.
Just do it.
Yeah, like we mentioned earlier on, the common fears are everybody's doing it. We've covered that. They're not. So don't let that be a reason. The biggest one is I'm going to be judged somehow for this. They're going to think I'm stupid or silly or like, who do I think I am? Or I've nothing to say, or I'm not an expert, or don't worry. That's imposter syndrome. Don't worry. It's not going to be perfect when you start. I can tell you right now. It doesn't matter how good you think you are or how bad you think you are. It doesn't matter. You just need to start. If it's something that you're interested in and you're passionate about, and it could be anything, it could be football, it could be shoes, it doesn't have to be like health or wellness or personal development or business or finance, anything that you think you're interested in.
It's the ones that are different that stand out anyways.
Absolutely, yeah. That's another great bit of advice. Don't just copy what other people do, because all you're going to do is be a shitter version of what they're already doing. They're already ahead of you. They're already doing that thing, and you want to just be another version of that. That's a safety, a coping mechanism. We talked about that when you came in the first time as well. The default for most people when they go on mic the first time is to just do what every other person in the podcast does. Ask the same questions.
You always say vanilla.
It's so vanilla. It's so vanilla. And it's not, people are giving us their time here. We have to do two things. We have to break through the noise. So we can't be like everybody else who want to break through the noise. We want someone to find us and listen to our show. And we have to offer real value. And if all I'm doing is saying the same thing that 50 other podcasts said, or if I got you on as a guest and I just asked you the exact same thing that 50 other guests did, it's safe because I'm comfortable because I'm not stepping outside the zone. Or maybe I won't. Like this is one for you, and you want me saying this as well. What if I piss somebody off or I say something I shouldn't say? And I'm always like, look, unless you're saying something that's a direct attack or is like racist or directly insulting or offensive to somebody, say what you want. Because then you'll attract the type of people you want to attract. If you don't say what you want and you try and keep everybody happy, you won't attract anybody. And nobody will listen. So like, what do you want to do here? And also
people want to see your personality.
They want to see your personality. And it'll be more friction for you because you'll be 50 episodes in talking absolute pony about stuff you don't care about because you think it's going to do well and people might like you for it. And you won't enjoy it. And if you don't enjoy it, you won't do it. Or you'll keep doing it and you'll be miserable. And that's very, very common. You see it with like influencers all the time. And you see it's very, very common, this audience capture. They've done one thing that has for some reason blown up on TikTok. So they just keep doing that thing and then become known as the person who does that thing. And the thing they do might have nothing to do with what they're actually interested in, but they have to keep doing that thing because the views are going up and that's what people expect from them. And then as soon as that person tries to do something else, once they've established themselves, their audience are like, hold on a fucking second, get back in your box there. We like you because you spin on your head. Like, don't be over here talking about philosophy or what you want out of life. So you have to be very, very clear at the start. Like, what do I actually want? And don't be afraid, because it is a vulnerable thing. Like, I'm sitting here now talking to you about my life and my business and what I want to do, and it's a vulnerable thing. People could not like that. People might not like me. I have to be cool with that. Like, that's all right. I'm a bit of a bollock sometimes. Not everybody likes me, so I just have to be okay with that. And that's just how the world is, I suppose. So that would be the biggest thing. Don't allow that fear of judgment hold you back. If you really believe you have something, and that doesn't just go for podcast or content, anything. If you believe you have something that you want to do or might add value, just go for it. Like, we're going to be dead. No one's going to care about me or Prymal in 100 years' time. No one's going to care. So I might as well make the most of it right now and do something I want to do, you know? So
what's the next step for Prymal Productions?
James is going to take over. I'm going to retire. Live on a beach. No, the next step, I really want to spend more time on my own podcast. That's my pure passion. Like, the people I meet are just amazing. Like the way my life has been enhanced by the people that I've met doing my podcast, not by the podcast, but the people that I've met and had conversations with. They've become friends, they become business partners, they become mentors. That's amazing to me. It's just completely changed my life. So I want to do more of that. We were laughing earlier on, like, I run the podcast studio and I'm so inconsistent with my podcast because it's the last thing I do.
See, it's always when you're doing something for yourself.
And that's why I was saying I wanted to grow the team, and I have James in now, and James has been a massive help from my podcast, not just the business, but from my podcast, because now I have that energy back again because he's here helping me do my podcast. So I don't have to do all of the work myself on my own podcast. I don't mind doing it for clients, but when you're doing it for yourself, there's so much resistance there. So that's one thing I want to focus on. A lot more, because what's really nice about what I do is a lot of my community and my clients connect with each other. and they help each other and they go on each other's podcasts and they have conversations with each other and they come up with ideas and they work with each other and all this sort of stuff starts to happen. So I want to lean into that a lot more and create a lot more opportunities for you and my other clients to meet each other and to grow and to share ideas. So that's what I think.
Set up like a little a community
Don't
chat.
be giving away the ideas. This is coming. It's coming. But that kind of stuff, like online space, but a physical meetups and stuff like that as well, where people can really engage. Because like a lot of people I work with are like-minded.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, and it just gives, like, you will learn something off some of my clients that I could never understand or help you with. I learn stuff off you. Everybody learns off each other. So again, the whole primal side of the business is I believe in human connection. I believe in good conversation. I believe in personal responsibility and empowerment. So if we can all meet up and help each other with that. So they'll be the biggest two things.
Looking forward to that now.
Yeah, no, and yes, I'm accountable now. I set it on microphone, so it
has to
will
be done now. Yeah.
So that's really it. Like I said, I've no designs to have like a monstrous company or anything like that, or to be doing these massive gigs or anything. It's all about this: the conversation, the connection, the community, the impact that we can have, and hopefully, like the biggest take home for me from all of this is when people text me about the podcast. I got one this morning. People text me about my podcast or DM me or whatever, and they say like, this has changed my life, or this has given me the courage I needed to make a decision, or this has helped me figure out something about myself. That's what I get from listening to conversations or meeting people. And for someone to send that to me, it's not because of me, it's because of the conversations or the guests, whatever. But like that's massive.
Yeah, I think I've gotten like probably like a couple of them now as well.
It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, I was like, what, really? From my podcast?
yeah. How have you found the I don't know how long we're going now. You can shut me up whenever you need to, but how have you found
45 minutes. Sorry.
We have another few minutes, yeah. The journey, the whole process, because you're 16, 17 episodes in now and you've gone through the system we spoke about.
I feel like you definitely made it easier. That's why I love this. And someone texts me, asks me like, oh, have you got any tips on starting? I'm like, here, text Dan. I just walk in the door, do the podcast, walk out, go get in my car and go. Like it's you make it so easy. But yeah, like when I started the first few, and I still kind of will get sometimes if it's a big guest or on, I will get a bit nervous or whatever. Like today I got a bit nervous because you're the pro.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. Well, you probably don't think so, but like, do you know what I mean? You've done a lot of episodes and then been on a lot of different podcasts and stuff. Where like, yeah, there we go, imposter syndrome again.
Are you still nervous now?
Yeah. No, I'm all right now. We can probably say it now, but yeah, I did find it like proper, like I was shitting it. Even the day before, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be my first podcast. I'm like, I'm going to start stuttering. And then obviously it's getting easier. Like still now I will get a little bit nervous, but I can notice a difference straight away from like the first few episodes to now. And yeah, as I said, you make everything real easy. Like even when we're doing like the starting of the episode and then the ending and stuff like that, like you'll help me kind of think of things to say, and with the course as well. Like I just thought, yeah, I think that this what you provide is really good. And anyways, for someone looking to start, I'm like, keep raving.
I didn't ask her to say this. Are you enjoying it? Are you having fun?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I'm learning a lot. Like even the last day, had Pierce on the podcast.
That was a very interesting episode.
Yeah, like that's what I had. Him telling us about all the grants and all, and you could get and all. I was just like, oh my God, I still haven't done it now. Like I need to go up to the local enterprise office and sign up. But yeah, and then with Paul as well, I learned a lot from that. Even like every single episode, I feel like you're coming out learning something new that you wouldn't, and you've, as you said already, when are you going to end up sitting down with them for an hour and having a conversation? Like that's not really going to happen. Even if you text sometimes someone on Instagram, it takes like probably like a couple of weeks until you get a full conversation out of them, because going back and forth with messages, where now you're actually sitting down and having a full conversation, you're just learning so much. So yeah, I feel like like last week I was proper buzzed walking out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really good, yeah.
Yeah, it is like listening to you say that. It's brilliant for me to hear that, because that's what I'm trying to create here. Like, and that's what you create for your guests when you bring your guests in. Like they get that experience. They come in, they're in the studio, and everything's done for them, and they get you to help them through the conversation. Because like we always talk about this, like it's a hard job to sit in that seat, because it's not just asking questions. You can be safe and just ask questions, but you're actually creating space for people to express themselves. And in most cases, you'll find this as well. I can see it in your guests. They haven't ever been given that space before. So they're like, what the fuck is this? I get to talk about this stuff for like 40 minutes. This is nuts. And you can tell by me, like the last 40 minutes there, like people, they talk more and more, and they get more excited and more animated, and the hands start to move, and they're connecting and they're making eye contact. You don't get it on Zoom podcasts or Instagram posts or anything like that. Yeah. So it's good to hear that you've gotten that feedback. And you mentioned something interesting there. You asked me before the podcast, like the amount of people that I see having conversations here, and everyone's different. Their guests are all different. They're all different. Their styles are all different. I learned so much from this process.
Yeah.
Like it's outright. I learn from all of my clients and all their guests. Even if it's little things about like psychology, I see how people interact with each other because I see you every week talking to different people. So I learn about your psychology and then their psychology and how you're changing and adapting and how you guys are interacting in a conversation.
You're probably dipping in and out of every...
I listen to everything.
Yeah.
Everything. I might be fully engaged all the time at every single moment of every podcast, but like James is listening to what we're saying here now. And he's working around the background there at the same time, but you are present for every single conversation.
Yeah, so you're taking in some of it, and anyways, even if it's not all of it.
And like, but even just take
and
your
then you
podcast,
have to edit it. So you're hearing it how many times?
But just take your podcast. Look at the variety of different people you've had in the space of only 3 months. How many different people you've had conversations with? That if I asked you like 6 months ago, will you have Pierce Dargan? Will you ever go and have a coffee with Pierce Dargan? You'd be like, the fuck would I be having a coffee? Whereas you brought him in and had a great conversation with him, and it was really interesting. You learned loads, and it was a cool experience. So I get to be here for all of that and absorb all of that and work with all these different people doing all these different projects. And it's just like, I'm like.
So what did you say? How many episodes would you say you do a week with your clients and then your own podcast? And
the average week, I would say maybe probably between 12 and 15 episodes.
Yeah.
On an average week. Some weeks are much busier.
How many would you do in a day? Because what happens? Why would you be saying, I'm going to get out? I need to get out your hair.
My hair.
Just because obviously I'd be thinking you have someone in straight after me.
But usually between 2 to 4 episodes a day.
Yeah.
Between 2 to 4.
You probably wouldn't be able to sit through anymore yourself. Never mind.
A few things happen. Like whatever about me. Like I could switch out staff and stuff like that. Wouldn't be an issue. But I think. It's enough. Like, what are we trying to do here? Like, if you're trying to mass produce, like a good day is 2 to 3 podcasts. That's a good day. Podcast in the morning, podcast in the afternoon, maybe another one. That's a good day. It's enough to keep the business running, and it's enough for me to be present, or James to be present for every, because there's more than just pressing the buttons. Like, we want to make sure how you're getting on, how's the podcast going, what are the numbers like, are we achieving the goals, how are you feeling,
able to have a little chat and stuff.
Who's the guest, what are we going to talk about, how do you feel about that episode, were you happy, were you not happy? Sometimes I give constructive feedback to people, so like, well, maybe what do you think about this suggestion? And I'll always be honest with people as well. But like, if you're doing 5, 6, 7 recordings in a day, you can't do that.
You don't want to as well be like in and out, because obviously there's sometimes clients are late, are like the guests and stuff like that. So like, if you're like back to back and then you're meeting the guests and the other clients,
that's the other thing. Like, have I ever rushed out of the room?
No, I won't actually. Yeah, you don't.
I can't rush out of the room because you're going to be under pressure. You're going to be looking at the clock the whole time, and you're going to be like, "Oh, I've only another 2 minutes to wrap this up. Let's wrap this up."
That's why I'd be panicking if we go over a certain time, because I'd be thinking, "Oh my god, he'll probably have someone else."
Usually it's you. You're the next client anyway, so because you do 2 back to back. But yeah, there'll always. I shouldn't really say this, but there's always a little bit of a buffer there for people. Not to if anyone starts taking the piss, I'll have a conversation with them. Like, but like there's space there for people to come in, sit down, have a coffee, relax, prepare for the podcast, bring the guest in, let the guest sit down, have a coffee, relax. Now we're not talking hours here, but there's a few minutes there for that. Do the podcast with no pressure on. If it goes under or goes over by a few minutes here,
especially if you're nervous and you know you're kind of pressured to get it in and out, you're kind of like
it's going to completely change what this whole thing is supposed to be. The reason that I say this is not a recording studio is that you're not here from 9 to 10. With a bit of flexibility in that to allow you breathe in the podcast, and it means you're not so focused on the time. Like, the time is only really there so we're not boring the ears off your listeners, and we're not an hour and a half in and I haven't actually said anything yet, you know what I mean? Just waffling. So that's why the timer's there, so you know, okay, well, we've got about 20 minutes to talk about this thing and then 15 minutes to talk about this thing. It's not so you can like, right, we have to wrap this up right now. Again, it's all part of the experience, because as soon as you start to bring those restraints in or constraints in, it reduces the quality of the conversation, because you just feel under pressure, and when you're under pressure, you don't enjoy it, it'll come across in the podcast, and then nobody listens. So it's just another little thing to be aware of with this stuff.
Thanks for coming on, Dan.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for listening.
Well, I say my famous quote as we're coming on to the end of the podcast. I actually stopped saying that now. But,
you did actually, yeah.
Since you said it, I was like, fuck, why say so
I didn't say you don't have to say it.
But I was just kind of like, I do always say that a lot now. I'd say now everyone who's actually listened to every single, they're like, yeah, she actually does say that all the time. But yeah, and anyways, thanks for coming on.
You're very welcome.
So if anyone is looking to start a podcast or looking to start with you, where can they find you?
Probably the best place is either Instagram, which is Prymal, Prymal Pro, or email me, which is dan@prymal.ie. And I always start this the same way. We'll have a chat, we'll have a conversation, and we'll usually jump in a Zoom call or someone will come in for a coffee and we'll just have a conversation about like, what are we trying to do here? What's the project? What do you want? Like, I did with you.
Yeah.
And we'll just make sure it's a good fit first. Like, is this something you want to invest in? Is this something that, like, what's the outcome here?
Yeah.
Is it going to work for you? Are we going to work well together? Do you like me? Do you like the studio? That's all really, really important.
Yeah. That's what I like, the way you kind of you explain how to set it up and all. Like, obviously going to the Spotify podcasts and stuff, and exactly what to do. Where I would have never known what to be doing. Like,
it's like anything. It's simple when you know how. It's simple when you know how. And like, I'm a terrible salesman, by the way, terrible. And you know this because you come in like, and I'm just saying, look, this is what I do. If you like it and you want to give it a go, here's how we work it. And I'm obviously talk about costs and all that kind of stuff. And here's how it works. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. Don't force this at all. You have to want to do this and you have to be willing to invest yourself into it, like really want to do it. And if that's what you want, I love working with people who are motivated and have something they want to get out there. So yeah, it's a very casual process. Lots of coffee. We drink lots of coffee. And and as I said, you've described it there. There's a nice little system there. We'll take care of all the bits we need to take care of. And if you want to create some content, let me know.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Demi. It's a pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed. If you're looking to reach out, you can find us at Unlock Potential Podcast or at demisnailsandbeauty.ie. See you next time.